Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 538. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am really thrilled today to have my guests, Anna Holtzman and Donna Jenson. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks so much for having us here.
So glad to be here.
So Anna is a trauma-informed psychotherapist who helps clients repair the relationship between mind and body so they can release chronic pain and other syndromes for good. She uses her training in somatic experiencing, nonviolent communication, and the mind-body approach for healing chronic pain that was pioneered by Dr. John Sarno, and has been a facilitator for Curable Groups, a 12-week educational and support group program for chronic pain recovery. Her writing appears on the Good Men Project, Medium, and Mad in America. Donna Jenson is founder and director of Time to Tell, with a mission to spark stories from lives affected by incest and sexual abuse to be told and heard. She wrote and performs her one-woman play, What She Knows, One Woman's Way Through Incest to Joy, which is based on her own experience of surviving incest. She leads writing and mindfulness workshops for survivors interested in finding their voice and using it. She's performed her play and led workshops at correctional facilities, colleges, police departments, conferences for mental health professionals, and sexual assault advocates. All right. So again, thanks again for being here. Let's start off just briefly. Let our listeners know where you're from originally and where you're calling from currently. Anna, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I am originally from Manhattan, New York, and I currently live in Queens, New York, which is where I'm calling from.
That's me. I was born in Manhattan and lived a long time in Queens. How cool is that?
That's very cool. I don't hear that very often.
Very cool. All right, Donna, how about you?
Well, I was born in North Dakota and then raised in Wisconsin, lived 25 years in Brooklyn, New York, and now reside in Western Massachusetts.
All right. So cool. Very cool. So look, doing this podcast, we're talking about obviously heavy stuff, but I mean, incest is probably right up there on the top of the list as far as I'm concerned. It's one of those subjects that a lot of people don't want to talk about. I feel it's very challenging to talk about. And hearing about what you both are doing is, I think, phenomenal and inspiring. How did this come about? How did you two meet?
How should I get started, Donna, and then you'll
continue
it? So I wrote a very, very long essay that I published online about something called the false memory movement, which was essentially a propaganda campaign designed to silence incest survivors. This came about in the 1990s. And I researched this extensively, wrote this big piece and put it online. And I sent it to a woman whose online videos really spoke to me. And I sent it to her, and she wound up sending it to Donna. And maybe you can say what happened next.
So I get this article from my friend Rathia Lee, and I'm just blown away. This woman can write like crazy. I want to talk to her. I want to know her. Nobody has written about the false memory syndrome movement and the awful things it's done in the way that Anna did. And so I reached out to her. I said, hey, and we started talking. And
How long ago was this?
March of 2020.
Oh,
This
so
is right at
recently.
the beginning of the pandemic
Oh,
when we
okay.
were stuck at home and we were all learning how to use Zoom.
Right, right. We had a lot of time. We had a lot of
Mhm.
bit of extra time, let's say. And we just hit it off really quickly.
Yeah.
And uh, we really liked what each other was doing. The work that she was doing around chronic pain, and the stuff I was doing around working with survivors. And should I keep going?
And then you invited me. So Donna was telling me that she's been running these writing workshops for incest survivors for a very long time. I was so blown away and thought this was amazing. And to my utter amazement, Donna asked me if I'd be interested in co-creating a workshop with her. And I thought, gosh, this is what an amazing opportunity to work with this incredible person. Um, and so I said, what if we combine the work I'm doing with chronic pain? Because the work that my specialty area as a psychotherapist is helping clients heal from chronic pain. And so many incest survivors have chronic pain. There's a lot of crossover there.
Mhm.
And so we spent the next like many, many months meeting periodically and just sort of like developing this workshop organically. We would run through it just with one another for months and months till it felt like it was right.
Well, I
And
want go ahead.
I just want to say, in the process, also just building this wonderful collegial relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm totally believing that so much healing comes through healthy relationships. And so it just was real natural for the two of us. But
No.
I interrupted you, Guy.
No,
What were
no,
you?
no. That's perfectly fine. I wanted to hear what you had to say. And I want to talk about the workshop, but I
Mm,
want to take a step back and first Anna and then you, Donna. Anna, you wrote that piece.
Yes.
First of all, talk about the genesis of that and why you wrote that.
Hmm. So maybe I can talk about that in conjunction with how I got into the chronic pain work. Do you think that would be
Sure,
appropriate?
sure. Let's do it.
So okay, because they're connected. Um, so um, so I started getting chronic migraines, um, which is what eventually led me into the work that I do. And I started getting them many years before I ever became a therapist. I used to work in reality television as a video editor, completely different career. So anyway, started getting migraines back then. And I always had a sense from the very beginning of that, that the migraines were somehow connected to my own childhood sexual trauma, and specifically the tension that I felt around not speaking about it openly for fear that if I did speak about it, it would be met with disbelief, minimization, or denial, which is very, very common when people disclose childhood sexual trauma. Um, and so eventually I left the career in television. I decided to become a therapist. And when I decided to go to grad school, I thought, wow, I'm finally going to be in an environment where it's accepted and it's okay to talk about this kind of trauma openly. And I thought that my migraines would subside.
Mm.
Um, but what I experienced instead of that was that in counseling grad school, childhood sexual trauma was not talked about very much, almost at all. And when it was talked about together with the caveat that therapists should be wary of and careful to look out for quote unquote false memories of childhood sexual abuse. So this got me very curious about what was this false memory stuff, and I started to research it. And meanwhile, my experience in grad school was that I did not feel safer and more comfortable to talk about my own trauma openly in that environment, but instead felt even more constricted about it. And the migraines actually got so much worse during the grad school that I started to be afraid that I wouldn't be able to work full time once I finally finished school. And so I started to look for solutions. I eventually found this app called Curable, which is what introduced me to John Sarno's mind body methods to resolving chronic pain through emotional release, not just managing them through calming techniques. And in conjunction with all that, I dove into this research about false memory because I wanted to understand this thing which caused me to doubt myself and silence myself even more. And so that's how those two things came about.
Thank you for sharing that. So Donna, you read this, you read the story that she wrote, someone sent it to you.
Mhm.
Obviously it ignites something in you. Talk about that. What was going on for you such that this was like, wow.
Well, like I said a little bit before, there are very few people that really know what the false memory syndrome movement did in silencing. I mean, there was a movement that was starting of survivors in the mid to late 80s, where we were starting to find our voices and starting to connect. And women's centers, especially, which I was very much involved in the grassroots women's center movement. And when this false memory stuff came on, it was so forceful that it pushed everybody back into the closet, afraid to go to therapists. And it's taken a long time. It's like it made the movement, our movement, step back several steps, probably more than several. But anyway, so I mean, we've been coming out of it for a while now, but to come across Anna's work and how clearly she was saying what they did and what the consequences were, that's why I wanted to know this woman.
Let's, if we can briefly just lay it out briefly. What did they do and what were the consequences?
Well, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah. Okay. So as Donna was saying, in the coming out of the women's movement of the 60s and 70s, this movement of incest survivor activists started to flourish in the 1980s. And this was such a new thing that incest survivors were speaking out openly. It was kind of like what's happened more recently with the Me Too movement. And so there was this moment when incest survivors were speaking openly, were engaging in activism, were connecting with one another, which was so new because that silence was also isolation. And so one of the developments that came out of that activism was that survivors started bringing their parents to court. And when that happened, that triggered a backlash, and specifically survivors bringing to court parents who were, middle or upper class, who had money, who had resources. And a group of these parents joined together and formed an organization that they called the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. They created this term, false memory syndrome. This was not a term that came from science. It was a term that came from the parents, and it was devised as a legal defense to discredit their accusers, who were their children often. And this organization launched a really wide-ranging campaign of disinformation through media, through propaganda, through lawsuits that were aimed at not only silencing the survivors who were speaking out, but a lot of lawsuits that were aimed at the therapists who were working with these survivors. So a lot of therapists became really understandably frightened because many people lost their licenses. They were attacked, they were harassed, and a lot of therapists stopped working with incest survivors altogether. Many stopped believing them. So it had a huge impact at that time, but that impact is still around because this phrase false memory, it's still showing up in popular media, in psychology sites like, for example, Psychology Today, and all of the similar psychology magazines still use that term and validate it. it's showing up in academic institutions. It showed up in my own grad school education. It even showed up in the trauma training that I did that was offered by the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute. So
in what context? How was it utilized?
It was utilized in that one of the trainers in my training, a trainer in my Somatic Experiencing training, and also multiple professors at university said, you should be very careful not to, quote unquote, implant false memories of childhood sexual abuse in your clients, which was a myth that was invented by these accused parents that, found its way through the media into academia.
Wow. All right. So of course, jump in.
I'm not the psychiatrist, not the therapist here. I'm more the activist, but I just want to say that this became, we were robbed of one of the greatest resources for healing by this movement. I think there's a lot of ways that we can heal from our trauma, but psychotherapy and counseling, it's huge in terms of healing. And I can't tell you how many stories I have from survivors who've had these awful experiences with therapists that I think many of them are afraid to go in deep to the work because of this false memory foundation. So anyway.
Yeah, and I've received many similar stories from people who've written to me based on the writing.
And I don't want us to spend all our time talking about them anyway. I don't want to give them too much press, because what we're doing now is so much better than what they tried to make stop. So,
all right, let me just remind everyone that I'm speaking with Anna Holtzman and Donna Jenson. They created Healing Feelings, Reconnecting Mind, Body, and Voice. It's a writing workshop for survivors of incest and sexual abuse who experience chronic pain and other syndromes. All right. So talk about this workshop. Talk about what you do. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Yes. So the workshop that we love leading together, it's a two-part workshop. So I lead the first half of it and Donna leads the second half, and they're very wonderful complements to one another. And it's the whole thing is an expressive writing workshop. And I start by delivering a short teaching about the mind-body connection in relation to chronic pain and other syndromes. And I lead participants in a writing exercise that's essentially having them dialogue with the pain. So they're dialoguing with the pain and asking it questions like, for example, this is the prompt that we start out with. It's, dear pain, what are you feeling? What would you like me to know? And what are you protecting me from? And so we start to learn what's underneath the pain. And what I teach is that the pain is just the signal at the very top of this chain of communication that goes from pain, and underneath the pain is usually anxiety or a fear of an underlying emotion. Underneath that is an underlying emotion like anger, sadness, or fear. And underneath that is usually a very core and essential need, like the need to be seen, heard, accepted, the need to matter. And so we do that, and then I hand the baton off to Donna, and she can describe what she does.
So the short version of when I tell people about us, I say, Anna's helping people give their pain a voice. And I'm helping them find their voice as a survivor. And so we shift from the teachings that Anna does into me, where what I do is I usually give some kind of a prompt. It's usually poetic, sometimes prose, but more poetry. There's some amazing poetry in the world that helps survivors identify very starkly with how they've been silenced, how they've held back, how they've been self-depreciating, you know, I can, long list. And through the prompt of the poetry, they then go into a writing exercise, free writing. They can write whatever they want. We try and connect the poetry that I choose with the particular lesson plan that Anna has that session. Like the next one coming up is self-compassion. So I've been digging around all my stuff to find a good poem that goes with the self-compassion she's talking about. And then after they do their writing, oh, and we also do a bit of mindfulness, some grounding exercise to keep them grounded. And then they read their writing to each other. And what's important is that and then we respond to the writing, but only in a positive fashion. What resonates with you from that person, what that person wrote, only. No correction, no questioning, no, oh, that reminds me of my blah, blah, blah. And so what that does, along with getting people to be validated with their writing, it builds community.
Yeah.
And I mean, both sessions, both pieces of the session are underlying is this idea of building community, which Anna and I are deeply convinced that that's a big healing component.
I would agree. This sounds very intense, very powerful, and very powerful.
Yeah.
Is this an in-person workshop? How long is it?
It's on Zoom, like everything is nowadays, which allows, you know, people from all over the country to be able to participate. It's 6 participants and us as 2 facilitators, so it feels quite intimate. And it's a 2-hour session, and we meet every other week. So there's 2 weeks to, you know, to process the learnings in between, and also to practice the journaling on their own for the participants.
Donna, can you go into?
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
When Anna is doing her piece and has people write with her lessons, she writes along with them.
Yeah.
And when I do my piece, I write along with them. And so we are also sharing within the work our own perspective or experience.
Donna, can you go into a little bit about your own story and how you started doing this?
Sure. I started out as a second wave feminist in 1970. And built 3 women's centers in the New York area, Brooklyn, Long Island, and the Bronx. And somewhere in that piece, I suddenly came to understand the depth of my own trauma as an incest survivor. And so I went into doing a lot of peer counseling. I didn't find a therapist till many years later. Well, that's a whole other story. Anyway, so once I'd done about 15 years of healing around my experience of incest, I was ready to become an activist for it. And I realized that it was through the arts that I wanted to bring, open up the subject. And that's when the first thing I did was write my play. I started performing my play. It's a one-woman show. It's a musical, by the way. I have,
of course it is.
Of course. I have a master guitarist, John Sheldon, who accompanies me. He's amazing. And it makes a difference to have music in the piece. And I would offer workshops, follow-up workshops from performances if there were survivors in the audience that wanted to start writing their own story. That's how that started. And then suddenly I realized I could be leading more ongoing workshops, which is what I ultimately did. And I'm always looking for a partnership, especially a partner that has a healing background, such as Anna. So that, it's kind of, we bring our 2 perspectives together in our work, which really is very dynamic. And I want to say, you said that this is a very heavy subject. Anna, you want to say something first? I just did a bunch of talking. What do you want to say?
Well,
Absolutely. I
qualified that
think
by
we're-
saying for me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is for
I-
everybody.
For
Well,
everybody.
yeah, but some
Yeah,
people
no,
are like,
it's
I
not.
can
I'm
deal
not
with this.
criticizing you guys. You're
Not at all.
absolutely right.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. And Donna, that's exactly the same thing I wanted to say something about, which is that, you know, I think because of the heaviness and the constriction around that topic universally, one might have the idea that a workshop that's devoted to writing from this experience would be scary, dark, you know, all those kind of things. And it is so connecting and relieving to be able to see that there is just so much commonality in the present day emotional experiences and creativity and aliveness and sadness and fear, you know, all that stuff. But it's just very connecting and enlivening.
Yeah. And I think that also the fact that Anna and I are crazy about each other. We enjoy each other. We laugh a lot with each other in our planning, in our debriefing and whatever. There's a lightheartedness to our relationship,
Yeah.
which I think is really important. And we bring that to the work as well. I mean, not that we're going ha 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 all afternoon, but we have there's a buoyancy to our approach intentionally.
Who's the workshop for?
What?
Who is the workshop for?
For survivors of incest and sexual abuse who experience chronic pain and other syndromes. I say other syndromes because it includes other stress-related syndromes, like things like chronic fatigue, food sensitivities, and all kinds of other stress-related syndromes too.
And we take time prior to the workshop for each of us to spend some time with each person that's interested in joining.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't for everybody.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't have joined this workshop when I started my healing journey. Never. I didn't want to know other survivors. I could barely stand hearing my own story, let alone anybody else's. So we do take care to, you know, talk with people about do they have a support system already built that they can, you know, lean on when they do this work with us. Because we're not doing, this is not a therapy group. It's therapeutic, but it's not a therapy group. You want to say anything else about that, Anna?
I think you said it perfectly.
Okay.
In terms of, you know, you talked about the false memory movement. Do you feel, both of you, that things are quote unquote getting better, that more light is being shown on incest and sexual abuse? What are your thoughts on this?
I do. I mean, the fact that we are able to be doing this workshop, be talking about it on this podcast, for example,
Right.
I mean, that's a humongous difference from where things were, let's say, in the 70s. I mean, there's no comparison. It's so different. And there's still a lot of work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, I got an article published about the time that Anna did with Ms. Magazine on the Me Too movement. Nothing about incest and child sexual abuse in the Me Too movement. It's a very important movement, very important, but they're not going here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's still, you know, we're not quite a movement yet.
What are you seeing in
Child abuse survivors.
Right. I mean, are there commonalities in the people that are coming to you for this workshop, or the stories you're hearing, or the struggles they may be having?
Certainly. I mean, there are commonalities, or they wouldn't be in this group together.
Right.
There's a range of ages, there's a range of backgrounds. So far, we've only worked with women survivors, and that have been the only people who've, expressed interest in the group so far.
Right.
I don't know if you want to say more, Donna.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I mean, I've been running my writing workshops since 2008. And I can count on one hand the amount of men, the number of men that have come into the work. There's two steps behind, so to speak. And we could have a whole half hour on just that. But that wasn't what I wanted to say. Commonalities, I want to say, we share fears and trepidations. We share issues around boundaries. Some survivors say they didn't even know there was a thing called boundaries. What is that? We weren't allowed, we didn't know about boundaries. And so trying to set boundaries is humongous for many of us. Many of us have a lot of issues around isolation because we were harmed in isolation. We stayed in isolation and we survived through isolation. So building relationships can be really challenging and maintaining.
And it's interesting to hear, often that will be expressed by one person, that it's very scary to come into a group with others.
Right.
And what I think is interesting is to experience the togetherness and the sharedness of that experience of feeling scared to be together.
Right. And the other thing is, we are so freaking creative. It's unbelievable. We had to be creative to survive. And when we get an opportunity to create in a really supportive environment, wow, it's unbelievable. The writing guy, you wouldn't believe the beauty of the writing that comes out of these groups. Wow. It's just astounding.
I have to agree with that. And it's almost, in a way, I feel like I've almost taken for granted the fact that every single person has writing that blows my mind. Every session, every piece of writing in every session.
Yep.
Well, you two are amazing and really, I mean, inspiring and amazing. And the fact that you're doing what you're doing is what it's all about. What it's all about. I mean, it's what this podcast is all about. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Where can people get in touch with you?
So people can get in touch with me at my website, which is annaholtzman.com. It's ANNAHOLTZ.com.
Okay.
And people can get in touch with me at timetotell.org.
Okay. I'll have those both linked up at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. All right. When and what about this work, the workshop?
We're going to do another one in the fall. We don't have the exact dates, but they will be posted on both our websites and be sent out to all our people. And I'd be glad to send you an announcement of when the workshop.
Do so. Excuse me. Yeah, please do so. I'll do whatever I can to get the word out there.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, let's wind down here with some go-to book recommendations, whether trauma related or not. Anna, why don't you start?
Yeah, so my top recommendation for learning about mind-body healing from chronic pain is a book called Unlearn Your Pain by Dr. Howard Schubner. Can I mention a couple more?
Yes.
Yeah, so my second favorite book about healing from chronic pain is not explicitly about chronic pain, but it's fantastic. And it's called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden.
Okay.
And then this is not a book, but a podcast called The Cure for Chronic Pain by a therapist named Nicole Sachs is absolutely brilliant. It's such an incredible resource. And for more resources on healing for chronic pain, there's a fabulous website called the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association. They've got a ton of info.
Okay. Now I have to ask, how have your migraines been?
I do not have chronic migraines anymore.
What
Yeah.
could,
And it's been a long journey, by the way. It's been
Okay.
a long journey.
what helped?
A ton of different things helped, but I would say that the two things that stand out the most are emotional release through honest, expressive writing and dialoguing with different parts of self. That has been number one. And also number one has been self-acceptance as a practice, as an active practice. And that Nathaniel Branden book that I mentioned is a great resource for, learning how to actively develop that practice.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. All right, Donna, how about for you?
So I would say, first of all, Trauma and Recovery by Judith Lewis Herman. Aftermath of Violence from Domestic Abuse to Political, terrorism, I think. I'll send you that. And The Courage to Heal, a guide for women survivors of child sexual abuse by Davis and Bass. And can I plug my own book?
Of course. We'll have that linked up too.
Yeah, it's called Healing My Life from Incest to Joy.
Awesome.
So,
All right, you too. Really appreciate it again.
Thank you so much for having us on. It's been
Yeah,
such
this
a
is
pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you for doing this podcast. I love it. I listen to it.
I appreciate that. You're welcome. And again, when you get dates for your workshop, pass it along and I'll help get it out there. But again, thank you so much for the work you're doing. You both are on the top of my list of inspiring people.
Oh,
wow.
my goodness. That's
Thank you.
It's
incredibly
what it's about,
touching.
man. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take good care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.